ever hear a person that preaches to you about one thing and you find out they're doing opposite of what they're telling you to do? Such a person is called a hypocrite, a person who lives one way and does something that's the other way. And we find this out in many cases in the country. Churches are really good at that, especially pastors. They will tell you not to clap cheeks and you find them booty clapping sounds. Then, even worse than pastors are politicians because they actually control laws and what happens in society. You see, politicians are really good at do as I say and don't do as I do. And nobody is more guilty than that than Tiffany Henyard. You see, Tiffany Henyard has used her power to attack her enemies, fire people, ruin people's reputation, and all of that, and expecting that none of those things would happen to her. Until it did. As we all know, she was voted out of the Thornton Township Democratic Caucus, and now she's crying foul with her homies.
So we got there at about 4:30. Some got there right before 5. When we tried to enter into the building, they told us we cannot come in because they had a party going on at 5 o'clock. Residents from throughout Thornton Township showed up in drones. We had buses out there, cars, it was super cold. I know I ran into you outside, and I was out there with them. They didn't even let me in. So when I did try to go in originally around 5, they told me they had a party and we cannot enter into the building. I asked, can you please let the residents inside the building? They said, no, they have a party. I said, but this is our residents. Let them in. They said, no, they did not register for the party. I felt that was so disheartening because at the end of the day, this is somebody's mom, auntie, cousin, uncle. You should let them in. It was cold outside, super cold. So I had a problem with that.
Well, that's interesting because, hey, it does appear that that process was not handled correctly. But stop the show. What if I told you that Tiffany Henyard is doing the same thing to her opponents in Dalton? You don't believe me, right?
Tonight, some of her opponents are calling her a hypocrite. She's fighting to stay on one ballot while supporting her challengers getting thrown off another. CBS News Chicago's Jermont Terry is always investigating, and he's here now to break down exactly what's going on tonight.
Joe, there's a lot to unpack. Now, some are questioning if Henyard is crying foul for getting kicked off the township ballot, yet using the same, very similar method to get her running against those running against her for the ballot in Dalton off the ballot.
Now, you've just seen there are people running for the mayor of Dalton. But wait a minute, Tiffany Henyard is stopping these two people from running for office.
Hobson Jordan and Denasha Harrison formed an independent party, but they hit a snag when someone filed this objection.
I mean, nice try, but yeah.
The petitioner is DeMarcus Grigley. He's an Henyard ally.
When you see her, you see him.
That's Grigley, in all black, standing behind Henyard today as she addressed the outcome of this week's township, where she did not get the Democratic nomination.
He only nominated himself and his slate, which was wrong.
Yet that's the exact reason the petition wants the Dalton Electoral Board to get Hobson Jordan and Harrison, who's running for trustee, off the ballot because they did not file a complete slate.
Very hypocritical, being that we just dealt with the situation with the caucus.
What was filed against us is not about the people's voice being heard. If you felt that that wasn't right and you felt that that was illegal, then how is it that it's okay to do it to the village?
Now, this is very interesting if you think about it, because even attorneys can agree with Tiffany Henyard that, hey, this is handled incorrectly.
I have reviewed the caucus rules that they employed yesterday, and I know that they weren't followed because one of them requires everybody who's there, who's voting, to sign in and sign an affidavit attesting that they're qualified under the rules set forth by the election code and also by the caucus. I know there were people present there that didn't sign those affidavits who voted anyway. So that shows me there's a flaw. I know there were candidates for other offices who are not members of the Democratic Party who are running in this election as independent candidates for office in Thornton Township. I've heard they were present and participating. So what it sounds like is this was a little bit of a free-for-all.
But guys, I gotta read this letter. Tiffany Henyard is crying, although we've seen that the evidence that her allies are basically doing the same thing to that lady and that gentleman. But listen to this. Sad music, call to action. A message from Tiffany A. Henyard. I stand before you today not just as your leader, but as your sister in this fight for justice, this fight for fairness, this fight for our democracy, this fight to get my cheeks clapped by, oh, sorry, she didn't write that, I'm sorry. My bad. This Saturday, which was just a few hours ago, from noon to 3 p.m. at the ILU Club of Chicago on Dalton, Illinois and Greenwood, whatever that is, I'm calling you, every man, woman, and young person, to stand with me. Stand with me as we demand accountability.
What?
Stand with me as we fight back against corruption.
Why the fuck you lying?
Stand with me as we protect our sacred right to vote. What we witnessed at the Democratic Caucus was nothing short of an affront to democracy. Hundreds of us, your friends, your families, your neighbors, stood in the cold, locked out, waiting for the opportunity to cast our vote. And while we stood there in the bitter air, they let their friends in through the side door. Let me be clear, this was not an accident. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate act of voter suppression. We have the proof. We have it on video. We have the testimonies of witnesses, people who saw exactly what happened. Let me tell you something else. He's a coward. Stop the show. I bet you won't fight him. I bet you won't get in the ring with him. That's an ex-linebacker. It's okay. Because if he thought he was going to win, he would have let the people in. He didn't just betray the process. He betrayed the people. Now, guys, this is when they wanted to do the identity politics, the I am a black woman or a black person politics. This isn't the 1920s when women and people of color were denied the right to vote. This isn't Jim Crow, where voter suppression was written into law. But make no mistake, what happened to us is just as wrong. I won't stand for it, and neither should you. So let's talk about that. See, Tiffany, it would work if maybe this was like a white Thornton Township Supervisor. Nope, but Napoleon Harris is just as black as you. You can't say you flew here, but he grew here. No, because he went to Thornton Township High School. You see, this is nothing about racial identity politics or racism or any of that. All those people who wanted you out, a lot of them were women that wanted you gone. All right, let's continue. I won't stand for it, and neither should you. We owe it to the generations who came before us, the ones who faced violence and hatred, just to make sure we had this right. So here we go again. You know, I am basically being mistreated like the blacks before in the civil rights movement that had dogs sicked on them, that basically did this to the slavery. You know, all of these things, identity politics, this is what Democrats do, but Democrats are doing it to you. It's another black person doing this to you. Do you feel that way when you mistreat others, when you rob them of their right? Do you feel like this? Oh, I guess it's okay. So when you're robbing somebody else of their right to do something, it's fine, right? Let's continue. We owe it to our children and grandchildren to show them that democracy is worth fighting for. Although you do whatever you want to do when you get a chance. Now I want to read this Dr. King quote. Let's skip this other trash here. As Dr. King once said, the time is always right to do what is right, and the time is now. Well, you never do what's right. So what are you talking about? You see, the reality is, Tiffany, let's say what he did was wrong. Let's assuming that that's the case. I'm actually kind of happy that you experienced the same corruption that you did it. Like if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. You just have a problem with the same thing happening to you that you do to everybody else. And I think that's hypocritical. And you are currently doing that to somebody else, boo. I know that you're mad, but guess what? Stop the show. Guess what? Listen, you can always go back to the private sector. And you can always, if people love you that much, you can start up a business, you can start up a restaurant, and you can do all these great things. Sorry. You're no good at business. Oh, you can't pay your own rent.
Got him!
You have a foreclosure on your first home.
Got him!
That's why you're renting and you can't actually own the house because you never paid the bank. Okay, so you want to use public finance to be able to get to the bag because you can't do it anywhere else. Well, listen, Tiffany, I mean, if you're just as good as you say you're good, as you are, as you think you are, you will have no problem getting it all back, boo. I mean, you can lose it. I mean, you lost to Thornton Township, right? So then you're going to go back and lose Dalton because, you know, Jason House is going to beat you in the Democratic primary. So then you could always go to OnlyFans and booty clapping sounds. See if you can get your cheeks clapped. But guys, what do you think? It's your boy Ashley Jackson back at it again with another episode of The Celebrity Junk. I appreciate you for all that you do. Subscribe to the bell. We're out.